So the date today is November 30th, 2022. I'm here interviewing the lovely Chickie Tuttle. And Chickie, thank you so much for being here today. I'd like to ask you what year you were born.
I was born in 1933.
And so that makes you how young today, Chickie?
That makes me 89 years young.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Happy birthday yesterday.
Thank you. It
Yeah.
was a happy one.
The
kitchen was just aglow with everything everything I could ask for in a birthday.
That's
or
wonderful.
in life.
That's wonderful to hear. Where were you born, Chickie?
I was born in Topsom.
And how did you come to live in Richmond, Maine?
From Topsom, we moved to South Paris, and I graduated in 1953 from South Paris High School on Main Street. And then from there, in between there, we moved because of World War II. We went to Fall River, Massachusetts first, and I went to St. Joseph Parochial School, and then we moved to Newport, Rhode Island, because that's where the torpedo station was, and it was employment for the family. And I went to St. Mary's School. I went to St. Mary's Church, which was the one that Jack and Jackie Kennedy were married in. And I used to work with the nuns in the church, cleaning and helping them. And after Newport, we moved back to South Paris, and then I graduated. And then from South Paris, I married Charlie.
How did you meet Charlie?
Oh, Charlie. Charlie and I met, well, I called it a dance hall. It could have been a barn, it could have been but that was our entertainment for the weekend, when we were growing up. And I had a friend, I worked in the telephone office at the time, and this friend who was really she was very joyful, and she liked to have fun. And I sort of was on the opposite side of the coin. And she said, oh, come on, Jackie, come with me. Let's go down to the dance down to Oxford. And we did. And in those days, when you went in, the girls sort of lined up on one side, and on the other side of the dance hall, the boys lined up. And I guess we'd sort of look each other over. And there was a young man, I didn't know him too well, but he was, my age. And he said to Charlie, I think I'll go over and ask her to dance. Charlie said, no, she's got 2 left feet. She's no fun to dance with. No. And so, within a very short time, Charlie waltzed over and asked me to dance.
So that was his way of letting him know that he wanted you
That's
to dance.
right. And from that time on, from the time that we met on that dance floor, that was it. I was so blessed with meeting somebody like that. He was somewhat older, but the life I had led made me old enough to. And he had been in the service, and he was stationed over in Germany, military police. And that was summertime, of course, because the dance halls really weren't heated in the winter. And so Charlie and I had quite a courtship. He lived he worked in Brockton, Mass, in a tannery. There was a tannery in South Paris. And then before we got together, he worked in Brockton, Mass. And I'd get a love letter about every day.
Did you save those?
Oh, I kept every one of them.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Every one of them I kept. And they weren't probably like the love letters that the young people would exchange today, because they were mostly, I love you, kisses and hugs. I miss you so much, I gotta go to a movie by myself tonight. So that was that. And that was basically our courtship. And then on February 6th, 1954, in February. Now it was about as cold a night as you could ever imagine. And it brings back so many memories, and I don't know whether you want me to keep just sort of talking or whether I should cut it short.
Well, I want to know how you journeyed to Richmond, Maine from your wedding.
All right.
What brought you here to this town?
In 1954, we were married February 6th. Jenny was born in November 10th, 1954. And in December, in the worst kind of a snowstorm, Charlie was a game warden then, and he was stationed in Danforth, Maine, which is headed north a ways. And we lived in Danforth for 3 years. And then there was an opening down in this area, and Charlie's sister was married to a game warden also. So she let us know that there was an opening, and that, you know, if we would be more comfortable moving down country where most of the family was. And of course we did. We did. That's how we ended up in Topsom. We rented a house down there, and it was under the idea of this one. And Mrs. Lowell did not want to sell it, and so we rented. And then it wasn't too long, it wasn't years and years, but Charlie had taken to court this man that he caught hunting illegally down in the backfield. And so when they got to court, and that was Charlie, and there was this older woman, and of course there was the guy who was in there for a reason. And lo and behold, this house had been empty. There were people in town that had gotten in touch with her and wanted to buy it. And she said, no, I'm not ready to sell. Well, Charlie met her because she was the one that paid her nephew's fine for night hunting. And I don't know how they got to talking, but it ended up talking about this, and she said, would you like to buy that house? She said, you know, no one's lived in it for a while, but her husband, who was owned a plumbing business in Augusta, he used this sort of as a hunting lodge. And there's one wall going into the other room that wasn't there, and they had a huge dining room table and a big light over it because they'd play cards. And someone told me along the way that she didn't approve of drinking. And so there's a place in the living room, and they showed Charlie and I, you lifted up one of those wooden ceiling parts, and there was the shelf to put your liquor.
They hid their liquor up there. What year was that then that you bought this house and moved in?
Oh, we bought the house in 1960. Lived here ever since.
And what was it like when you moved into Richmond in 1960? What did this road look like?
The road was a narrow dirt road.
Alexander Reed Road was a narrow
Yes,
dirt road. Interesting.
A narrow dirt road.
Mm-hmm.
And in bad storms, at the intersection of what we call Reed Road now, it used to be called the Pitt Center Road. And where the Brown Road intersected with that, they would have to shut the road down because they couldn't get the plows through. In fact, the snow was so deep here on our hill up where Jenny and Skip have the Christmas trees, they couldn't get a plow through there. So that's what it was like in those days. And we were always prepared. We had a kitchen stove that was wood, and we have a wood furnace and an old furnace, but of course the wood furnace we couldn't run because it goes with a blower, and that was electric, because the electricity shut off and on. And so that's that's how we got to Richmond, and we've been here ever since.
Now, you had a long career teaching in Richmond. Were you a teacher when you moved?
Oh,
Okay, so how did that evolve?
well, that's another story. Jenny and Dana were in school, and Eva Chikrin, who was principal of the Marcia Bucher School and first grade teacher, she said, would you like to substitute? I said, I've never been in a classroom with children. She said, try it. And that was the beginning, Anne. That was the beginning, dear. I substituted from kindergarten through high school to find out an age that I felt I could help the children most in a year. And I ended up in the second, third, and fourth grade, which were excellent for me. But I had no degree. No degree. I didn't even have a college course behind me.
Well, I think you have a degree in love, but that's just my
I have a degree
opinion.
with love. I do. And that's what the children for me needed. But they also needed structure. And when they came through the door, I respected them. They knew it. The room was orderly, per se, but they had enough creative projects. And I respected them, and they in turn respected me. I don't ever remember having one of them sass me or be rude to me. And one day, this young man, and I should have picked up on it, we were third grades, and he really was basically more than I could handle that particular day. And I sent him to the principal's office. And when I looked out the door a little later, there he was, sitting in a chair out in the hallway. And of course the other students going by were making fun of him. You know, what'd you do wrong this time? That type of thing. I should have hauled another chair and gone down there and sat with him, because I must have been having a bad day myself. All days weren't rosy. That's all I can think of. And other than that, I never did. The school allowed me to bring the children out here for a day. And they played. They brought their own toys and their own creative things and baseball bats. And we had a huge parachute, and we'd go out back and we'd hold that parachute and we'd get our exercise in. I never had any trouble here.
Can you tell me a few things you learned from those children?
Oh, everything. Yeah. Working with children, you learn so many different things. So many different things. I was, last night for supper table, Nathan and Lucy had made a delicious salad, and in it they had some pomegranate. Well, I had one dear little girl that used to bring those to school and eat them for her lunch. Well, of course they weren't peanut butter sandwiches, and they weren't, because you know we could eat right in our own room, and they weren't egg sandwiches. They were what the parents had at home to send to school. And this girl would sit here and she, because the children around her didn't know what it was. And I didn't either. I had never had pomegranate before. And I never said anything to her, but I mean, that was for her. It was her classroom too. So I learned material things like that, but I learned their method of talking to me without words. And
How was that, talking to you without words? What did they do?
Well, in the morning, there was, thank you, dear.
You're welcome.
In the morning, you just go stand out in the hall. And when it was time for all the children to come in, they'd come down. And when they'd sort of stop slowly by you without saying anything, and you could look at them, and then they'd hug you down here,
They needed that hug.
They needed it. But lo and behold, shortly thereafter, we weren't allowed to touch the children. We couldn't touch them. And I figured, time for me to retire.
Education has changed a lot.
Oh, it's changed so much. I know of some of the changes. So when I deliver flowers over to the school and take them to the office, or somebody would come out and get the flowers, I don't know if you can say names, but Debbie Boyd said to me, Chickie, you sure you don't want to come back and substitute? We really need you. And I said, I love the children so much, but things have changed so much, but I honestly don't think I love the job enough to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle all this new stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's changed a lot. Let's go back to Richmond, what the town was like when you moved here. And let's talk about how it evolved all those years, the changes you saw, the people you knew. What was the theme of Richmond? What did you think of this town when you moved to it?
Well, that would be hard to say along with anybody who lives in town. In my day when we first moved here, that dirt road, maybe one or two cars going by in a day. You just did not, and you knew who they were. And if I was outside, and Charlie was outside, there would be, later on when more cars, everybody would either peep or wave. And that's the thing of the past. That was their way of saying hello. But anyway, I was not a town resident, and they're very different. Yeah, I was country.
You're more rural. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I guess so. That's a better word. That's fine with me. And I was too busy to get involved with any of the, whatever you want to call them, the groups in town. I was perfectly content here. I was happy to paint my own house inside and happy to paint my own house outside with Charlie. And we just worked together, and I didn't paint with a brush and make beautiful pictures, but I certainly have had a paintbrush in my hand a lot. And I mean, we burned wood. I would go to the woods with Charlie and bring home wood. And it isn't that I didn't have time for the people, and it isn't that I didn't get along with the man, but it was a completely different way of life for me. But when I went into town, the place that is Kimberly's now, because the place where the flower spot was, that was a garage. Mm-hmm. The railroad track used to have trains going over it.
Yeah.
Then Kimberly's, the front part of Kimberly's, when you went in the front door, that was a 5-and-dime store. And Mr. Roberts ran it. And he was a very nice, very pleasant man.
Was he married to Polly Roberts?
No.
No, it was a different Mr.
No.
Roberts. Okay.
He was, and in the back, that was where his funeral parlor was. And you probably know all of that, Ann. But that was it. And then you'd come down to this place where another woman, she was the one that had the scanner for town if there was any emergency. And she also sold the newspapers and a little bit of candy, and she was lovely. She was lovely. And then next to her, that was Kimberly's, railroad tracks, Kimberly's. I'll go down a little further. There was a pharmacy here in town, Eleanor Jones, and she was a good friend of Eva Chickering, the one who got me involved in teaching way back when. And teaching in those days, I can't let any more go on without telling you, we were a family. We were a family. I mean, we we'd help each other along as far as the children that came from one grade to another. And from the grade they were in from a year to go to the next one, we'd do the same. But the teacher's room, you know, it was a family there. People would cook and bring in food, and it just is different today, I'm sure.
We at Richmond as a town has recently withdrawn from the RSU too, so
Yes.
now we're going to hopefully take back some of our school system to keep it a family. I know that's the goal of many people in this town.
I know I voted for it.
Mhm.
And I voted for it the time before it didn't go through. But certainly the teachers who have still hung on, and there's some of them that have, God bless them, it's a sort of like a feather in the cap, because they need to have that relationship with the children and with each other. It's a family. I mean, when you as a parent send your child, which is probably the most precious thing in the world, into someone else's care, oh my, you hope it's someone that can do more than tell them to sit down, open that textbook, page 78, and we'll take off. Well, we left off. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. You taught the whole child. And I loved it. And I was, as I say, I started substituting, found the area that I would be more effective with the children. And in the meantime, I took my college courses.
Oh.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching full time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Jenny comes in so much, and Charlie. They just ran the house.
Your children.
The children ran the house, and they were excellent, and you know, they figured I needed to do what I wanted to do.
They supported you. That's beautiful.
Yes.
And you know, your daughter Jennifer is such a talented florist, and she ran the flower spot here in 2 locations, finally ending up on Main Street for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess she just inherited a natural talent from her father and you, and a love of plants and, you know,
didn't pass that on to her, but her father did.
Her father did.
Because her father could grow anything. Gardens and flowers, and I don't think the table was ever without some kind of flowers. Lots of times just wildflowers. They'd pick a few
and you have a beautiful Christmas cactus beside you.
Lovely?
Yeah.
Well, I had one that was 3 times that size, and I had it in the living room, in the picture window, and it just got so big. And one year I thought, well, I guess I didn't have much to do that year. I counted the blossoms, and I counted over 2,000 blossoms that fell to the floor or that I picked off. I've got pictures of it. It was just, and I don't know whether it just got old and didn't want me to expect them to keep coming up with those blossoms every year, I guess. I don't know. But I could have watered it to death, I don't know. But Jenny inherited, and Jenny passed this on to Nathan.
Her son. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. You can look at the lemon tree out there. You can look at the tree that when the sun is shining, we open the storm door and it sits right there in the sunshine. And
it's sort of a legacy of your husband, Charlie, that is living through generations.
Yes,
it's
it
very
is.
Beautiful.
Yes, it is, dear.
You know, I wanted to ask you, because you follow a path that I follow, and it's a very important life path, and it's the path of gratitude. And whenever I've talked to you, Chickie, you're always telling what you're grateful for.
And I really mean it. And I don't mean to get boring over it. But that's the first thing when I open my eyes in the morning. I'm thankful for so many things. And they just zip through my mind. And that's the way I start my day. I am. I have been blessed in so many ways. Now, it wasn't a Pollyanna fairy tale life. I had to climb some mountains,
Of course, we all
hard
do.
climb, and then when I slid down the back, I was a little tougher and a little bit more understanding because I had lived through it.
It's beautiful. So,
But
if you could make a statement to the world, what would you say?
life is so different, Anne. I don't know how many people would even read the statement or listen to the statement. The world is so different. I don't watch the news because it's really depressing.
Yeah.
But when I get on the computer and pull up, they give you line of headlines on the side. This couple that left their 2-year-old child alone in the apartment, locked in with a bottle of water. And they went 3 states away to New York. And that's very recently.
Yeah.
And then the manager of the apartment building checked it out, and there was that 2-year-old child with an empty bottle. No food. And I thought, how can anyone do it? So, and then when they started investigating, they found that man had lived in New Hampshire, and he had a missing daughter, and they started looking a little more closely, and he had done her in and put her out in the backyard. So I'm sure anything I'd say to somebody like that, and they would pay no attention to me. I mean, I couldn't believe that anyone, and other people, when they replied, whatever you call it, they said they couldn't do that to their cat or to their dog, or much less to a 2-year-old child. But here's 2 people who are thinking of themselves to the point that
How do we fix it? How do we change it? How can we repair what's gone wrong?
I don't know how you ever could with this child. And I don't know how children that have been abused sexually, and if they've been removed from their own home and gone to a foster home, that, hey, that wasn't. I understand those people have piles of papers to go through to get a child placed. They don't have enough time to follow through. And there again, some of the foster homes could use that check every month, but they also abuse the child. So I don't know. And what I could say probably wouldn't pertain to this. I mean, I'm 2 or 3 generations away. I've got grandchildren, great-grandchildren, grandchildren, my own children, and myself. And things have changed. Oh my.
A Holocaust survivor told me once, children everywhere are our responsibility. They are our future.
Yeah.
But I think that you impacted a lot of children's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you made a great difference, and I'm very thankful for that. And I want to thank you so much for sharing a little window of your life with us today. And I applaud you. Before we started the interview, you told me what a great love story you had with your husband. And I can tell this house is full of love.
I have a beautiful picture in the bedroom, not photograph, but a picture with the handle. And after Charlie passed, one of my nieces gave that to me. Well, Charlie used to leave, not on fancy paper or anything, but he'd tack on the back of that chair, "Oh, I love the woman who sits here." And then if he went fishing, he'd say, "Oh, I'm going to miss you so much." And he'd tack that on the headboard in bed. And I mean, there were so many of those. They weren't fancy. they were written. I could, if I had been a writer, I would have loved to have been able to write a book, and every piece of paper that he left for me, I would have had a chapter of that, because there was a lot of meaning that went behind it.
Thank you so much, Chickie.
You are so very welcome.
Thank you for sharing with me today.
Thank you. I don't think I told you at the beginning, if I'm talking too much, you just put your hand up.
No, you're good. You're good.
I feel very comfortable with you, Anne.
Thank you, Chickie.
And even although you've had other interviews, I hope and pray that you will let somebody, maybe locally, ask you questions of how you perceive Richmond. Truly.
Well, and I want you to know I love it. I love it here.
Yeah,
I
sure.
love the people.
Yeah.
I'm blessed completely by knowing people like you and other people I've interviewed. And I have great hope for the future of Richmond. And Richmond is a good community. That's what I think. And in closing, I just want to thank you again, Chickie. You've been a wonderful treat.
You are very welcome, Anne. Come again. We'll have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea.
I will do that.